So, Stardew Valley has a lot of clothes, and unlocking all those clothes can be a little vague. For a lot of players, including myself, it can be a little frustrating when the game doesn't really explain things to you up front. So I'm here to try and break things down into a more digestible chunk of information, which is why we're diving into one of the coolest and most customizable features in the game, the tailoring and dyeing system. When I first started this game, like many others, I wanted to make my own outfit, but had absolutely no idea where to begin. So hopefully this guide is useful to you if you're in that same position. And although it might seem complicated at first glance, once you get a hang of it, the limits and applications here are practically endless. So first of all, when it comes to tailoring and dyeing clothes, your best friend is Emily. Everything clothes and dye based will come straight from her. In order to actually unlock the ability to dye your clothes, you'll need to have earned your very first piece of cloth, which is made from wool. And there are a couple of ways that you can get wool. The most consistent and steady supply of wool is from both sheep and rabbits, if you have any of those on your farm. But if you don't, you could try your luck with the traveling merchant. The traveling merchant can either sell wool or cloth, but both come in at a pretty hefty price, with wool costing anywhere from 1,020 gold to 1,700 gold, and cloth on the other hand costing anywhere from 1,410 gold all the way up to 2,350 gold. There's also a small chance that Emily can give you wool in the mail as a gift, but that's a gamble, so it's not really worth relying on. So clearly, if you're planning on making clothes regularly, it's a pretty smart investment to get yourself a rabbit or sheep. In the event that you do get yourself a piece of wool, you'll also need to get yourself a loom, which requires your farming skill to be at level 7, as well as 50 wood, 30 fiber, and 1 pine tar to craft. Cloth can be made from a loom using wool, and the higher quality your wool, the higher chances that your loom can actually produce 2 cloth. So once you've got your piece of cloth, the next day you'll get a visit from Emily, and she'll let you know that you're free to use her dye and sewing machine anytime you want. So this is where it all begins. Once you've made your way over to Emily's home, you'll want to find this little corner of her house, which has a sewing machine and dye pots. Now, it's important to note that in order to dye clothes, you'll need to be currently wearing them. It's also important to note that some clothes cannot be dyed, and to determine this, all you have to do is hover over the item in your inventory. If it says dyeable, you're good to go. Interacting with the dye pots will pull up this menu. And right away, you might notice some of the items in your inventory have been grayed out, and some haven't. For the ones that haven't, you'll notice this little colored dot in the bottom left of each item. These dots correspond with the colored pot that it belongs in. Fill up every pot, and you'll create a dye bottle. Clicking on this dye bottle will open up sliders for hue, saturation, and lightness, allowing you to pick whatever color your heart desires. And just like that, your clothes have been dyed. Moving over to the sewing machine, this is where you'll be able to create new clothes using a huge assortment of items, as well as do some simple color changing. In this menu, the clothing item goes into the slot at the bottom left, and the item you want to use as dye goes into the top right. With the sewing machine, you can essentially combine colors. So for example, if I had a blue shirt and I used a white item as dye, I would receive a slightly lighter shade of blue. If I then used a yellow item as dye, I would receive a green shirt. So while that alone isn't too complicated, it opens up the options for customization pretty greatly. On top of this, different items have different dye strength. For example, if I wanted to dye my white pants a dark shade of red, using fire quartz as my dye will take 4 times until it's the darkest shade of red that it can be. This is because fire quartz has a weak dye strength, or 25%. Using something like eggplant parmesan, which has a medium dye strength, it will only take 2 attempts because a medium strength is worth 50%. On the other hand, using an object like cranberries as my dye will make it the darkest shade of red on the first dye, and this is because cranberries have a strong dye strength, which is worth 100%. There's an entire list of items and their corresponding dye strengths on the wiki, and I will link that in the description if you're interested. You can also use a prismatic shard as your dye, which will open up a color slider, just like what you're used to with the dye pots. So that's the dye portion of the video out of the way. But the sewing machine has another feature that I mentioned earlier, which is the ability to tailor special clothing. To do this, you'll need a piece of cloth in the clothing slot and practically any item in the other. Doing this, you can create some really unique pieces of clothing. When this icon shows up, you'll know there's a piece of clothing that you haven't discovered yet. And obviously, if you've already made it, you can see what the combination creates. And again, the Stardew Wiki is a fantastic resource for this, so you can see the entire list of clothes and their corresponding items. And I will also include that one in the description. But that's not all. Those of you with a keen eye may have noticed that I seem to have my own personal little sewing machine in my house. And you can too, but it might require a bit of patience. In order to get your very own portable sewing machine, you have to complete the Rock Rejuvenation quest on the quest board for Emily. She'll request that you bring her a couple of gemstones, and in return, you'll earn your very own sewing machine. So now you have all the tools you need at your fingertips to create some really cool and unique outfits and show them off to your friends. And that just about sums up everything that there is to know about clothing in Stardew Valley. I hope you enjoyed this guide or found some use out of it, and if you did, please consider liking or subscribing, as that really is the best way to support me and the channel. Thanks so much for sticking around till the end, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.